So let's get into one of the auditing standards over audit planning. And this is auditing standard, or PCAOB auditing standard 2101. Kind of gives guidance as to how the auditor should audit. So before we get started, what do you guys think? Does planning only happen at the very beginning of the audit? No, it doesn't, right? Professional skepticism tells us that we should be critical the whole time that we're in audit. So if we need to adjust, right, plan new procedures, you do it. So what kind of activities should an auditor perform at the beginning of the audit? What should they do in the beginning? Well, one of them we already talked about. The very, very beginning, they have to decide what? They do need to do their due diligence, right? Because they need to decide whether or not they're going to either accept or continue with that client, right? So before the audit starts, you need to understand if they're going to accept or continue with the client. And then we also said if there are any ethical issues or ethical or independence requirements that needs to be laid out at the beginning of the audit. You also want to understand the terms of engagement with the audit committee, because technically it's the audit committee that hires the auditor, which is why there's no independence issue in terms of the auditor auditing management, right? And so you have to kind of understand how the communication is going to go with the audit or the audit committee as well. We'll talk a little bit more about who they are and things like that as we get further into the client. So at the very beginning, what type of matters should the auditors evaluate during the planning stage? There's a whole list of them. You don't have to memorize them or anything like that, but you do need to understand kind of what happens at this stage, right? There's a whole list in your book. It includes, let's pick some, like Daniel mentioned, understanding the company's business, their organization, their structure. Somebody, I think it was Robert that mentioned the internal controls, right? Any legal matters. I think Angela told us that we should search the internet to see if there are any recent articles, whether or not, like really understanding what the client does, what issues might result because of what the client does, who they are, how the company is structured, what they do. Those are the type of things that the auditor should understand at the beginning stage. Why? Well, here's where the auditor sets the overall strategy. The timing, the scope, and the direction of the audit is set in planning. Does it change? It could. But remember that the auditors have to go into every audit with a plan, a systematic plan. Well, that's why planning is so important.